It's live.
Hello, hello. Welcome to A Place at Home Franchise LinkedIn Live. Today we're here with founders of the A Place at Home Franchise, Dustin, Distefano, and Jerod, Evanch. We hit 10 years in business this year, you guys. Yeah. A decade. That's insane. So today we want to hear from you what the last 10 years has been like. Kind of a wrap up for 2022, what it's going to look like going into 2023. And what I'd like to start with is the fact that you guys started in Dustin's basement. Tell me a little bit about the journey from Dustin's basement to the office that you have now.
Dustin, go ahead, man. It was your basement. You did better than anybody.
You know, it was a long conversation about whose basement we were going to start in. And set up a little bit better at the time for starting a place at home. I will say it was fun. It was fun. The worst thing that I remember was Jerod was behind me. So every time we'd go to open our chair, and Paula was also behind me. So we had three people in one small space. So if you'd push back, I'd run into Jared's chair. If Jerod pushed back, he would hit my chair. And you think now, I'm a pretty loud talker and Jared's a pretty loud talker. Think about us on the phone with two people at the same time. That was a fun time.
I'll never forget some of those caregiver interviews and orientations in the bowels of your house. You know, someone knocking on the door saying, "Hey, don't mind the dog. You know, step it over the laundry. Come on downstairs. Let's go have an interview."
That is why today we don't allow new franchise owners to start this in their house because of that awkwardness. I will say I don't even think naivety is a word, but how naive these younger, and majority of them were female caregivers, would open our door and me and Jerod would be like, "Come on downstairs to interview in my residential home." They did it. I mean, Jerod did one, I think, at 11 p.m. at night, even.
They had to start the next day.
And I was out of town. They were in my house while I was out of town interviewing. I think we were there for 3 months.
It's funny that you mentioned that specifically because I came on board long after you guys had moved out of your basement. And one of your first caregivers that interviewed there was still working and is still working for A Place at Home to this day. And that was her favorite story to tell about how she had to go into your basement to interview for the job.
Ashley?
That's Ashley. Yeah.
Ashley. That young, 19-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm. Now she's married. She just got married. And
basements to marriage. It's great.
So started with the flagship location in Omaha, Nebraska, right here, and have since grown to 24 locations right now nationwide and still growing. You guys want to... Oh, yeah, okay, I'm sorry, 25 pending. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about some of the highs and lows that you've experienced?
Go ahead, Jerod.
Well, as you know, it's been 10 years. First off, I think one of the things that has helped us to be successful is just Dustin and I's ability to be able to work together, which has grown over the course of the years. I would say the number one thing there that helped is communication. So if anybody out there is looking at a business partnership, I would say the number one thing you need to do is to be able to communicate, because some of those lows throughout the time were during times when we weren't communicating very well. And so it was definitely a learning curve. But oh my gosh, so many highs. You know, the time when we said, you know what, we are going to leave Dustin's basement. We're going to get an actual office. I mean, that was the biggest high at that time. And then not only that, not even 6 months into that new office, we had to upgrade to another office because of our explosive growth. And we stayed there, for about another year and a half before we needed an even larger office to accommodate the growth. So seeing that, and I would say one of the highs that I'll never forget being down in Dustin's basement actually is running payroll. This is only like maybe 3 months in. And that was back when we used to mail all the checks. And all of a sudden I'm looking here and I've got this handful of of checks that we're sending out to caregivers, I said, wow, we're like allowing people to provide for their families, and not only like a couple, like we've got like a dozen people or more right now that we're paying on a weekly basis. And that was that was a big shock to me. And of course, so many more than a dozen now, hundreds. I think we're at 600 some active caregivers now across the country. But yeah, that was the first kind of big
140
wow moment.
I think that's actually something magnificent to note, because you guys know I'm a huge believer in like the energy they put out there and the reverberations that that energy can have. And to know that you guys started something that has since touched so many lives is incredible. Absolutely spectacular. It's why I still work for you. It's why I like being here. I can't get enough of that energy.
I mean, what, about half of that time?
Yeah,
I'd love to see what I looked like 10 years ago.
Oh, I can find a picture, and I am happy to show everybody on social media.
Look at that. Everywhere. And Aubrey was a blonde when she started with us.
I was, and now I'm almost completely gray. Crazy how that works, huh?
Okay. To piggyback off the highs and lows, I guess mine is a sense of going the business ownership side of things. You know, if you want to talk about our business story, I mean, me and Jerod only had like $5,000. We were broke to start this thing, and we're trying to start families, and we had to convince our spouses to eat our income while we were trying to start this, and that was a fun conversation. But they definitely showed us a lot of support, and we lived off them for a few years, which was rough because I had to ask for an allowance, and that was very that hurt my pride a little bit. But they provided us with a lot of support and encouragement to keep on going. I would piggyback on when we moved out, and going marketing. Right. And I kind of want to put this in perspective of current owners. And this is why they buy into our franchise. They want to know the experiences. We were 28 years old trying to go in and sell services that we had no idea how to do at that point in time. We just knew what we wanted to do. And go to a 90-year-old senior and tell them that we're going to be in charge of taking care of you, or talking to a family member saying we're going to be in charge of taking care of your mother. Being 28 years old, it took we took a few licks. We had to gain a lot of trust in the community first. And that was the one thing that Jerod and I really focused on is, hey, if we're going to get a referral from a social worker, we better make sure that person's damn taken care of. Because once they see that and we communicate that back to the social worker, we have the family members reach out to them and say, hey, these guys are really good. And they're going to validate who we are as an organization and where we're coming, right? We were small at the time. That was like the aha moment when we started getting referrals, consistent referrals from our community. But no matter who we were, when we first started, I remember meeting a gal at a hospice company. I can't remember her name, but she looks at me and Jerod and she's like, are you guys crazy to get into this? What do you know about home care? Literally, what do you know about home care? And completely shut us out. Now, we could have shut down, cried about it a little bit. I did. But other than that, we moved on and we just kept fighting. And that's exactly what our franchise owners do when they start. And we share that with them and share those experiences. And, we're talking about the highs and lows of the beginning, the highs and lows today, right? We see now our highs and lows, or we're experiencing the lows of the people who were experiencing our lows 10 years ago. Like we're reliving those, and they're depending on us to talk them through that, right? I really enjoy it. That's my favorite high now, is saying, all right, you're having a low day, focus, right? I just had a call the other day with a franchise owner, and she was in tears. And I said, listen, stick to the plan, stick to the script, do this and do that, right? I'm not going to explain what was explained,
no,
but she did all of that. And today she's having a great week. So, I mean, those are the kind of things that I take pride in today, 10 years later, as opposed to 10 years ago. And I'll stop talking. I'm sure Jerod has some now highs and lows I could share, but
I could talk for the next hour on, especially so many of the highs that we are thankfully able to see now. And that transition from being home care owners, right, to being franchise owners and sharing and awarding locations across the country. I remember when we signed our first franchise location in South Denver, we were so excited and which was a very exciting time. I remember Dustin and I were talking on a phone to a seasoned franchisor, and they said, "You signed one, huh?" They said, "Well, you can find just about anybody to follow. One person to follow you. The tough thing is you get two people. That's the second person. Then you got something." We're like, "Oh man, now we got to get another." And we did, and we got another and another. So seeing each one of them, and then being able to follow our model, being able to grow in their community, and seeing it work again, like I had just said, any one person could follow somebody, but to get more than one, and then just to see it be able to grow and have similar successes that Dustin and I had. We have an owner now, and I won't mention any names, but he's extremely competitive. And I remember his biggest goal was to outproduce Dustin and I's year one number, year two number, and just continue. Always wanted to say, all right, well, what did you do year one? We want to beat that. What did you do year number two? We want to beat that. And year two, I will say that they did beat Dustin and I's, annual revenue number. So that was, although, we had to swallow our pride a little bit, it was, it's like you're looking at your kid almost, with just being so happy that they were able to do not only what you've been able to help them get to, but even surpass some of the things that you had done. So that was a big high for me. And now
are you talking about Alex?
Yeah, I'm talking about Alex.
Full disclosure, not to be competitive, if I were in Scottsdale, Arizona, the mecca of seniors, I'm pretty sure we would have been all right. But we were in Omaha, so not to discount his accomplishment. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely had a bigger pool, a bigger lake to fish in, but no, he was incredibly competitive and went after it, and is still the largest single owner in our brand. So, but now we are seeing multiple people hit some of those milestones that Dustin and I hit, and looking at some of our goals in the next year. Just can't wait to see how many people are achieving and even surpassing what we've been able to, what we were able to do in our original location.
Yeah, Britt and Jessica are whooping our ass. Right. Those two. Oof. Yeah.
Yep.
I think they've already surpassed what Jerod and I did in year one, and they're month 6. So, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, we have a great team of owners, and it's pretty spectacular to see. And going back to what you had mentioned earlier, Dustin, about how you guys struggled and you were told no before, and you just kept at it. 10 years later, being able to give that same advice to all of these franchisees, and to see them work through it and start to reach the level that you guys were when you started franchising that's got to be incredibly rewarding, as I'm sure most of this is for you guys. Is there one a biggest accomplishment that you guys named?
I don't mean to cut you off, but we have Megan over here who's asking what made us both get into home care. So we started off today's conversation really with us launching in the basement, but it did start almost a year prior to that launch in discovery of what is home care, business ownership, business plans, financials, and all of that kind of rewind back to the beginning started with Dustin and I's own personal realization of the need for home care, me with my grandparents and their exceeding need for care, and me having a small family and not able to provide the attention and the time we once did. Really was getting to me, and not even knowing or realizing that there was services out there that could help to facilitate this, and that so many people and so many families were already doing this. When I noticed and saw what home care was, it was kind of like a light turned on, and we said, wow, this is an amazing thing. Dustin and don't want to speak for Dustin, but his great grandparents or great grandmothers not having access to care in rural Iowa, and wanting to be able to, create a business in which could provide care, and to make sure that there wouldn't be more great grandmothers out there that wouldn't be able to stay in their home. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the light bulb moment for us. And after really looking at the industry, it didn't take long for us to not only know that, of course, it's an amazing industry, and there's a at that time, and still now, a ton of amazing companies out there providing care and amazing caregivers all over the country. But we wanted to do it different. we thought we could do it better. And so we wanted to create our own system of care. And so we've always just looked at it as that. We needed to solve a problem, and we've created a company to do that. And we've always looked at it more of a solution-based business. And that's what brought us to senior-focused care, right? Having not only in-home care services, but a multitude of in-home care services and other service lines to be able to help our clients in their home. So that's what got us into this. Prior to home care and way prior to franchising, I was in real estate. Dustin was in not only RN staffing, but customer service industry. And so neither one of us were in healthcare. Closest thing to healthcare I was marrying a nurse, and Dustin married a public health professional. So that was about as close as we were to healthcare. But Dustin, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, but I just saw that pop up from Meg.
Yeah, no, I mean, it like most of our owners too, we all have our stories on why. That's what we look for. And I mean, rural America, yeah, a lot of my family grew up in rural America. They didn't have a lot of resources. Still a big passion of mine is to figure out rural. I think Legato Living, another franchise that we have the pleasure of being a part of, is a huge solution to that in the future. So definitely.
Okay. Well, that was a great question, Megan. Thank you. I do have a question that I think I did ask actually. If you guys could speak to what you would consider maybe one of your biggest accomplishments, whether that's individually or as a company altogether. Also, I'm going to tag somebody else in to take over hosting. Anna, our brand strategy gal, is going to come in and take over for me. There she is.
Hey, what's up, Anna?
Hey,
I've got some stuff. Yeah, I've got some stuff happening here. I'll jump back in, but I'm going to let her go ahead and take over. But in the meantime, if you guys could speak to what you feel like your biggest accomplishment has been in the last 10 years.
Sure. Yeah, I can start there. Thanks, Aubrey. And just full disclosure, everyone watching, Aubrey was kind of thrown in this position last second to host us and ask these questions. So it's not that she was ill prepared. We were a little ill prepared for that. So I'll go first on the biggest accomplishment. I got to say, like, selling Omaha, when we started a place at home, to start a business with, $5,000-$10,000 between the two of us and grow it for 6-7 years. I think 7 years. We had it for 7 years. And then be able to sell it to some fantastic franchise owners of Chris and Rick and let them take it on and entrust the care of the people that we were taking care of after the fact. And they're doing a great job. I think that was our biggest accomplishment today, for me anyways.
Yeah, I mean, as business goes, that was a huge milestone. That was an amazing accomplishment. And I think it's just the reward and seeing all the small accomplishments that all of our owners are making. And they're not small by any means. They most certainly are hitting amazing milestones. They're able to, create a lifestyle for themselves. They're able to help, hundreds and hundreds of seniors in their community, and watching them on the stage during our award ceremony at the convention, and just seeing their faces light up for, all the great things that they've done. Every one of those things, I don't know, they kind of put those together, and those seem to me like some of my our biggest accomplishment so far is just seeing that grow. Personally, the biggest accomplishment came for me about 3 years ago after I had graduated from UNO with my MBA. I was asked to come back and talk to a class, a future cohort of the executive MBA program. And after I was done speaking, I had a student come up and thanked me. They said, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. And I was a little shocked. I didn't know who this person was. But they were receiving services from a place at home, and without a place at home and without our caregivers being able to care for this student's mother, they wouldn't have had the time or the ability to come and get their graduate degree. So that was one of the biggest eye-opening experiences for me and personal accomplishments in starting a place at home.
Nice. I see there was another question. Go ahead, or Anna. Sorry, one question. Megan had another question. I don't know if that's where you were going there, but
that is where I was going.
What was the turning point for growth that turned you towards franchise? So I'll go ahead and take a stab at it. This was like an internal conversation between Jerod and I for years. I was always about franchising, and Jerod always wanted to make sure that was the right. If you were to talk about the gas pedal and the brake, I'll dive right into a fire and try to figure myself out. And Jerod's the water, and let the steam rise. I don't know if that's the right kind of analogy, but it sounds good, and we're going to go with that. So with that being said, what we decided was you got to have a personal touch. Megan, you asked the question, what made you both get into home care? And that is the exact reason why we franchised. We wanted to find like-minded individuals like ourselves who wanted to make a difference in their community, like a Natalie Watts or a Trista Johnson, who I see on here commenting, that wanted to make a difference in their community, that had a story to tell about their taking care of a loved one, or seeing the aging process against their loved one, and want to make a difference in their community. And I think you get that more and more with franchise owners than you would specifically hired managers. And that's not to say hired managers don't do this for the right reasons. I've met many directors and administrators all across the board who have this same exact story. They just didn't have the financial means to take that risk of starting their own, but they do have the story. And that's one of the main demographics of franchise owners that we look for, are those administrators and directors of home health, of assisted living, of skilled nursing, that may want to make a difference in their community. So that was, for me, the turning point. I don't know if Jerod has something different to say.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, in that as Dustin and I were growing the business, we did a few things along the way that allowed us to essentially step away from the business and work on the business versus in the business. We were able to hire people to follow our systems and follow the model that we had built. And so that was kind of the light switch moment for us, is when we said, you know what? Not only are we able to step away and allow this business to grow without us having 100% eyes on the business, but this means other people can too. And although that could also be interpreted as growth in other corporate locations, Dustin looking at the franchising, and for all those reasons he had mentioned on the ability for franchising and franchisors to have that ownership in their local location, we ultimately thought that'd be the best way for home care to grow. But also in that same time, not only were we just growing a big business over $2 million in revenue and a relatively short amount of business life, before we started franchising on an annual basis, but we were also being awarded Best of Omaha, and have been awarded Best of Omaha, and thanks to our owners here, Rick and Chris, continually being awarded Best in Omaha. And that may not sound like a huge accomplishment to someone in major metropolitan areas across the country, but for us, this is like the mecca of home care. Right at Home is a fantastic company, a franchisor to hundreds and hundreds of franchise in-home care franchise locations. Home Instead, 1,300 or more different locations now, both headquartered right here in Omaha, Nebraska. And when we launched this brand, we had 40, by the time we started franchising, 50 or even more competitors in this space. So not only did we start in a location that already had competitors that were here for 10, 15, 20 years before us, but we were able to grow really quickly and become one of the best in Omaha in a very short amount of time. So we said, you know what, we can do this over and over again, and other people can see that same successes in their market.
Sure.
So what kind of does the next 10 years look like?
I can do, Jerod, you want to do next year? I'll do the 10-year. How about that?
Well, another part of what allowed us to franchise was implementing in our EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, through a book called Traction. Dustin and I got behind that. It allowed us to really formalize everything. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because we just did our annual planning meeting yesterday. And so we have some very specific goals for next year. Next year, we plan on having at least 13 locations launched, 5 of those looking at potential corporate locations, and then the others being awarded through new territories. Also, we want at least 11 of our current owners doing over $1 million in revenue. We have multiple owners doing and exceeding far over $1 million, but we really want at least 11 of our owners to be over that $1 million mark over this next year. So those are the next year primary goals.
Yeah, in the next 10 years.
Dustin, what do you got for 10?
The next 10 years, we'd love to be at over 230 locations. Definitely something that we can accomplish. I think we have the strongest validation of franchise owners that you can possibly find in the senior care space and franchising. I mean, what was our FBR score? 100%. Well, I don't have to ask it. I know the answer. 100% of our franchisees all said they would do this business again, which is on Jerod's little banner there.
Yeah.
And I think it's because not just because of the service offering. This is a hard business, but it's the way we approach it. It's the way we coach it. It's the way we motivate our owners to continue to grow. And I know they're on here commenting. Maybe they can validate it a little bit for us too. They're all doing amazing things. This last round of owners in the last 5-6 years is completely different than our first. The industry is completely different than it was for our first 6 after COVID. And they've adapted to it and are blowing up. Some of the biggest pieces of feedback we get from new candidates that they're scared of is caregiver shortages, right? And so with caregiver shortages, I mean, we got the numbers to show that we went from 2,500 applicants a year ago to 5,400 applicants in this last year due to marketing strategy and at our headquarters. So if we continue growing those strategies with our marketing department, I'm sure you like that, Anna, because you are our marketing department, and supporting these owners and teaching them things on how to grow and utilize the internet and technology and artificial intelligence, and we continue to develop the brand over the next 10 years, I think 230 locations is definitely realistic.
Absolutely. And then to kind of wrap things up here, do you have any tips for new business owners or owners considering starting a franchise business?
But yeah, I'll go first here, and then Jerod can take it home. My biggest tip for people looking at starting a business or even a franchise, you got to find out what's best for you. That's number one. A franchise isn't for everybody, right? Starting your own business without a franchise isn't for everybody. So first off, figure out what's your best fit and educate yourself on those 2 different approaches of owning a business. And then the other one for me is block out the noise. Block out the noise. You will want to start this, and you'll go to friends and family and community members and say, hey, I want to start XYZ, right? And you're going to get doubters. You're going to get people who say, oh, you're crazy. You've never done that. What does the market look like that? And it can be easy for you to shell up and shut down. But what you really find rewarding is when you basically say, I don't block that out and go for it. And continue to block it out. I mean, for 3 or 4 years, 2-3 years when Jerod and I were doing this, we were getting shut out. And then we did it again when we went into franchising. All these people were like, you don't know franchising, right? We self-taught ourselves franchising. I mean, we had some consultants that helped us in SMB, but we essentially took on the development. We didn't hire anybody. We did it on our own. And people were like, you guys are crazy. You have know anything about what an FDD is or what this is and that is. Here we are today, again, proving people wrong. So I think that's what you got to do is block out the noise, stick to your guns, be educated, and everything else will work out. That's my biggest piece.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'll definitely add in a few things, but the very first would be, to just take that leap of faith. Analysis paralysis is something that in my life I've definitely fallen victim to. much better now than the best I've ever been in my life now than ever. But I mean, you can analyze and you can project and you can make business plans and performance all day long. But if that's all you ever do and you never actually take that leap of faith and start the business, then it's all for nothing. And you can always find a reason not to do something. There's always room in a projection to be too conservative and to say, well, what if the worst case happens? And it's good to, of course, map out what that worst case scenario is, so you have you can plan for it, but also look at the best case. What could really happen if this thing explodes. So that's definitely it. And then secondly, if somebody is looking at say they have a business and they want to franchise it, I would say that no business is perfect. Don't think that your business has to be perfect in order to franchise it. You will most certainly learn along the way, and you'll learn something from all your owners as you continue to grow. We as a company are bigger, better, faster, stronger, smarter, better KPIs, better measurables, and just know so much more now than we ever have. And it's because of our owners and all the learning we've done throughout the history of a place at home. So no business has to be perfect in order to franchise. You definitely learn as you go. So I mean, I could talk about this all day, but I'll stop there.
And I just want to add one thing to kind of close out now that Jerod brought that up. And I talked about blocking out the noise. One of the coolest things that I've experienced in the actually a week ago, is I met with a gal who wants to franchise her business. And I agreed to meet with her, and we went out and we had a beer at happy hour. And I said, how did you, we've never met. And I said, how did you learn about me? And she said, I was at a networking group. And I talked about growth, wanting to franchise. And she said, I think you should talk to Dustin and Jerod. So the community, 5 years ago, didn't know franchising. 5 years from now, the community of Omaha is saying, if you want to franchise, talk to these guys. And, that's another thing I would say, give back. Once you figure it out and you do well, and you want people just like ourselves who want to franchise, reach out. I'm more than happy to help you. Now, if it were to turn into you want like 20 hours of my time, that's a little bit different. But, always feel free to reach out. Jerod and I are huge people who love to give back to individuals and entrepreneurs who want to grow. That was kind of cool to see last week, though, that someone recommended us. That was the first time.
Yeah, that's a good way to end on the year for sure and get ready for the new year. Everybody else who's watching, we'll be back on our regular LinkedIn Lives the second Tuesday of the month. We'll start them back up.
All right.
So if there's anything else you guys want to add to that, see everybody in 2023.
Been a great 10. Looking forward to the next 10.
Yep. Talk to you guys later. Thanks, Anna.
We'll see you.